Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Brett Wean. I'm the Senior Communications Writer for American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And here is my partner, the star of the show for Ask Dr. Jill, our Vice President of Research, Dr. Jill Harkavy-Friedman.
I like the way you pointed at me. That was good.
Did that work? Am I pointing?
No,
I'm pointing in the wrong.
Yeah.
Because the camera is like left to right or right to left or whatever.
That's how things are now.
I think that's a great metaphor for what many of us are going through psychologically. Good
enough.
And it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It just seems a little weird for a second. Our topic today is mental health tips for the winter and beyond. And when I first brought up this idea, Jill, I thought it was wonderful that you made it a real point that it's not just about getting through the winter. It's like, let's figure out some strategies with our mental health that won't just take us through the winter, but, or maybe things that we find that work for us really well, that we have in the spring and summer.
Yeah, all year long. What works for us one day may not work for us the next. So we need a whole group of resources to try and tips to try. And don't forget that you tried something that didn't work a few days ago, but it might work today. So, but winters, some places can be tough. Some places they're still sunny. This is a very unusual time that we're going through now. So I think there's a lot of stress and we all need ways to cope.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing fine, but I feel like I can also I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Me too.
I don't know, how are you feeling before we get started taking questions, which we would love to have your questions sent in. You can just think right below where you're watching, you can type. I'm going to do a lot of hand gestures today.
That's
type in your questions right below. A thing just popped up. But yeah, right now feels so weird to me at least, because we've gotten through so much these past 9 months or whatever it is. Some of us have, unfortunately had losses of different types.
Mm-hmm.
And challenges, and we're not all going through exactly the same thing, but hopefully we're all kind of helping each other, and
mm-hmm.
There's a recognition that a lot of us are going through something.
Right. I think that's one of the things is that I would venture to guess, although I've just been sitting at my snack table since March working away, and I'm very grateful that I have work, because it's very difficult if you don't. It's a lot of time and a lot of hours and a lot of stress that goes with that. So, but I would venture to guess that most people are experiencing some baseline level of stress right now from the pandemic that goes up and down from a high baseline of stress, depending on what's going on in your family, in your world, in the world at large, in the United States. So, and stress is a little tricky because it gets your cortisol level going. And when your cortisol level goes up higher, your whole body feels, you can feel differently. Now, some people experience it in their stomachs. Some people experience it in their heart rate. Some people don't sleep. Everybody experiences it differently. Some people eat a lot. Some people don't eat at all. Unfortunately, it can raise it can cause weight gain just in and of itself. But we all have, it's funny, somebody asked me the other day, well, I feel stressed. Well, that's just in my head. It's like it doesn't count. And it's like, no, stress is a full court body response. And you feel it because you feel it physically as well as mentally. And some people think they're not stressed. And then when something gets a little better, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize how stressed I was. So the idea that it's all in your head is not really accurate, and we all feel stress differently. So I wonder, how do you feel stress?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you, yeah, but you can.
I was just about to say that even if it were just in our head, the head is a physical organ in our body. That's a big deal.
Right.
But yeah, I feel it.
Well, it's in your brain.
Right. I like, it makes me think, Jill, of how you run your meetings, which is that you have brilliantly, whenever you're in meetings with people, you have your team or whoever it is, take a moment to actually just breathe. We all breathe together.
That's right. It actually only takes 36 seconds. You can do it regularly. Breathing is something that's very portable. You can do it many times. You do it all the time, but the breathing I'm talking about is, and there are lots of variations, but what we do, because we don't have a lot of time, is we take a breath in and we hold it. We breathe for the count of 4, and then we hold it for 4, and then we let it out for 4 or 5. And do that 3 times. So being the researcher I am, I calculated that's 36 seconds. Unless we do 5 out, in which case it'll be 38 seconds. But my point is that it's something we can all do, and it doesn't take everything away, but I like to describe it as it turns the volume down on the stress so that you can stop and think about what your next step is going to be, what you're going to do, or it just brings relief. So I think it's something we can all do, and we need to do it regularly. I have a lot of graphics that I send to people all the time that just says breathe, because your body is, again, on alert, and breathing brings oxygen. It lowers that stress level. It sounds so simple. It's not a cure for mental health conditions, but it does help everyone.
Well, in answer to your question as to how I'm doing, though, I was going to talk for a second, and I see we have a question that is kind of in line with it, which is that, no matter what side of the aisle you're on or how you feel about politics right now, the inauguration is tomorrow, and it's this weird moment of however you feel about things, chances are something is going to start, we're sort of on the brink of things changing in some way.
Right. This year is different.
And so, but it's also partly like it's the last 9 months and everything, not just that, but like all the weird stuff that we've been going through and the sort of interruption, in a way, of our lives. I've been pretty even keeled with most of it. And for some reason, like today and around now, it just feels like I'm almost like it's almost like, am I finished the race? Are we finished this race? Can I take a break? Can I relax now? But I'm not sure. Anyway, someone writes in, it's more a statement than a question, but we will accept it. Is someone simply writes in, politics are driving me nuts. Yes.
I think you're probably not the only one. And there are, one of the simplest ways of it's really getting to you is to take a break from it, to just take a breather, maybe turn off your TV or do people listen to radios anymore? Your podcast or whatever, and take a break from it. But I myself, I need to know what's going on, but if I watch it too much, then it starts to get to me. So I have certain times of day, twice a day, when I watch the news, because I feel, for me, it's important to know what's going on. But if I watch the same thing over and over and over again, because let's face it, there's only a certain amount of news, no matter how big it is, the way our news cycle goes, it's over and over and over. And that's what can get you even more revved up. So I watch in the morning and I watch in the evening, but I always watch a funny show after I watch the news so that I can kind of shake it off. But I do need to know what's going on. So that's one way to deal with it, is to not watch it all the time, to pick a couple of times a day that you want to watch it, or don't take it in right now. If it's too much, you are more important than what's going on in the news. Now, some areas are affected more than others. I'm in my little brick apartment building in New York City, so I don't feel as affected. If I were, for instance, in Washington, D.C., where the military is walking around all the time and I can't go out and I see all this and feel the threat around me, I might feel very differently. But you know how much you can take and how much is too much. And give yourself permission to just do what feels right for you.
Right. And by the way, someone named Carrie writes in, I've used the breathing exercises on my Fitbit. Even 5 minutes of just focusing on my breathing really help. So that's nice
great.
to hear that's working for people.
So if you have any of those gadgets, a Fitbit or watch, or you could count, you can breathe.
Yeah, now I'm picturing the Count from Sesame Street doing it, which I think would be really amazing. One breath, Here's some more. We're getting into it now. Thank you guys for sending in your questions. We are off to the races. Despina writes in, is there a way to cope with depression when you're on your own and isolate yourself as well? That's a big question for these last many months.
Yeah, but I think it's one that many people are wondering, whether it's depression or anxiety or substance use or what's going on with your mental health that needs attention. Well, our mental health always needs attention, but sometimes it needs more. So find out, first of all, you're not alone. And so find ways to connect with other people. If you can isolate, you can also connect. Even if you're not feeling well, there are enough places that you can attend online without even saying a word to hear that you're not alone. And that's a way to connect. The second is make sure you're taking care of your mental health. Make sure if you have depression that you're working with a therapist, that you maybe have a psychiatrist or maybe taking medication. Diet, exercise, drink water, get sleep, good hygiene, having things in our lives that we connect with. Maybe it's a pet, maybe it's a plant. If it's not a person, obviously we prefer to make sure there are people in your lives. If you don't have anything to connect with, create something, because we all have something we can connect with. We just have to do it. So tend to your mental health. You know what your signs are when you're feeling better or worse, or if you don't, try to learn those signs. There are lots of apps for your phone or your computer that can help by asking you certain questions about how you're feeling or giving you some problem-solving techniques. I understand when you feel depressed, that doesn't get rid of the depression, but what you do and how you think does. Exercise, like I said, changes your brain in a way that can be really mood enhancing. If you can't exercise, find something that you can do, like some art or write in a journal. Journaling is really great. But there are many things that we're each, we did a poll and we found out that about 70% of people are doing things to cope with the stress for their mental health, even when they don't have a mental health condition. It is up to us. It's also up to us to reach out when you're alone and feeling that way. It's hard because you feel like nothing's going to matter, or sometimes taking a shower is a major accomplishment. We understand that, but that doesn't mean it's going to be every day. So it's a process, but you don't have to go it alone either.
I want to, and maybe at the risk of projecting or reading too much into the way the question is worded, but just on the off chance that I'm picking up something here. I'm reading her question. Is there a way to cope with depression when you are on your own and isolate yourself as well? And in the way that she words that, it almost makes me wonder, does she mean that she is sort of finding that she herself is purposely isolating herself?
Right. Well, we really appreciate your question, but we don't know you, so we can't say something directly to you. But what you personally should do, but you can explore that and find that out. And I think a lot of times people isolate because their mind is saying things to them like, nobody wants to be with me when I'm like this, or I look I look terrible. I don't want anyone to see me. And just ask Brett about what I looked like right before we started this. Shocker. I got very involved in writing a paper and didn't get ready quite fast enough. But it's a lot of it is what you tell yourself. So if you tell yourself, I'm afraid, this is scary, I'm going to get the virus, or I'm going to this, whatever you tell yourself makes a difference. You can tell yourself, there are things out there that are very stressful, but I'm going to do this. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I can make it through this. I have made it through other things. Maybe I've made it through another episode of depression, and one foot in front of the other, but get help. You're not alone, and reach out, even though it's hard. Your mind is telling you one thing. And guess what? You might reach out to someone and they might not have time for you, or they might not want to hear it again, but there's someone there. So keep trying. I don't want to make it sound easy. It's hard when you're depressed. It's hard when you're anxious to change those thoughts, but it takes energy. But it can be done, and it's worth it. And, therapy, if you're not sure where to go to find a therapist, you can go to our website. We have ways to find a therapist. If you go to afsp.org, get help. There are some ways that you can connect with someone. Getting therapy is also not that easy to get a therapist, but you just have to stick with it.
Right. And help is always available, even if it's not so easy. I mean, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There's the crisis text line. You can find all that information.
That's right. And SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, took me a long time to learn that. SAMHSA is a .gov, has a locator, a therapist locator. So that can help you. So does Psychology Today. There are lots of sites. We also have lots of sites for people of different ethnic and racial groups that may be particular to your group. So please check out our website, afsp.org.
Absolutely. Yeah, one person writes in simply, I'm so low at the moment. So we're sorry to hear that. And I'm sure you're expressing something that a lot of people are feeling.
I think you're definitely not alone. So if there's sometimes the thing, and I want to talk about some specific tips, but sometimes there's a little thing that can make a difference. And so I was going to say, set your sights low. In other words, don't aim for something that's going to make you feel fantastic, because that's going to feel unreachable. Start off with one little thing that makes you feel a little bit better. Unfortunately for me, sometimes that's just a little piece of chocolate, but sometimes it's, watching a show that makes me laugh. Sometimes it's going to be, sometimes it's just taking a shower. There are things that can make you feel a little bit better. So start with that. Maybe if you can do it once a day, then twice a day. These are tough times. These are low times. Have a routine. It almost doesn't matter, as long as it's a healthful routine, what it is. It doesn't have to be long. It could be, get up and make your bed. It could be get up and change your clothes. Go have your breakfast. Then either start working or exercise. Whatever it is, make it a daily routine. Which doesn't mean you have to do the same thing every day. I know people who exercise know you don't have to do the same exercise every day, just do some exercise. The other thing is, try to attend to the basics. Like I said, sleep, healthy food, exercise, stay hydrated, which I find really hard during this time, to remember to drink water, and connect with somebody. Whether it's somebody you know, calling them or texting them, or it's somebody you don't know by joining a group online. You can be a spectator. So we have a routine, find little things that make you feel a little bit better. Try to see those good moments, because it's easy when you feel low to miss those moments. Make your own little celebration. Be nice to yourself. We can't have dinner parties these days. Not that I ever had dinner parties, but we can make a nice meal for ourselves. It takes effort, but you'll find when you start doing something that usually makes you feel better, most of the time, not 100%, you will start to feel better. Also, this is smiling and laughing. This is no joke. Smiling and laughing actually improves your mood because of some of the hormones that it releases and the muscle changes. So smile, find, something that can bring you a smile.
Those are good tips. I also wanted to point out, since it came up about joining groups, one of the ways that people often first hear of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in our communities are through our walks. Now, these events are still happening, in a physically safe way now with the pandemic, so that they're, instead of the out of the darkness walks, they're out of the darkness experiences. And it occurs to me that for some people who wouldn't necessarily show up for a walk, it might actually be a nice moment to get involved. So you can, if you want to find out more about that, because that's an amazing community of people who have just taken up the cause of suicide prevention and just creating a culture that's smart about mental health in general. And you can go to afsp.org/campus walks if you're a student, or just walks.
And also just, we have chapters. So if you have a good idea, connect with your local chapter at afsp.org, and maybe you could bring it to your chapter, because it's been harder to connect to the things we usually connect to. And so for AFSP, like I walk in the community walk. I usually also walk in the overnight walk. I usually go to the advocacy forum in Washington, D.C. And so there are a lot of things I do with AFSP that are different, but they haven't stopped. So we have our Out of the Darkness experiences. We had our advocacy forum online. We have tons of things that we're doing in your area. We have the Research Connection program. So while I really miss the walks and being together and just hugging everybody and that's it, there are lots of things that we can do to stay connected with each other. And I think many of us have, like, those connections have loosened a little bit because we haven't been physically together. And so making that effort to connect. And if it's with something else, reach out to those things that before we were more limited in our actions that you would do, and the people that you would do. The other thing is, another tip is finding something you like to do. Some people call it a hobby. My daughter has been trying to find something I like to do, and I really appreciate that. She got me paint by numbers, basically. She got me beads, but she finally hit a chord with working with polymers. And turns out with polymers, you can also make jewelry with beads. So, it's just that clayish stuff that hardens when you put it in the oven. And they come in a gazillion colors, and
like shrinky dinks.
They're not, shrink, they harden. Oh. So I should have worn the dinks I made, but it's very cool, and it struck a chord with me in a way that those other things didn't really strike a chord. So my point with that is, don't give up on yourself, and if you're trying to help someone else, don't give up on them either. Because something eventually will work.
That's a nice, optimistic, positive thing. And people really are enjoying what we were talking about with breathing. Karen writes in, breathing is the best thing. I'm currently studying voice disorders in school. I'm a speech therapist to be. And all our training sessions with patients start with deep breathing exercises, which I found makes me so much better as a therapist, because I gather myself and the patient gathers themselves, and then you're loose and relaxed and ready to get going. So
yeah, and if you do that at specific times of day, then that becomes a routine. But again, breathing you can do anytime. I find myself, sometimes I'm like running to the kitchen. Don't ask why I'm running to the kitchen. I have no idea. But I just feel very pressed and I'm going to do something. Maybe I'm going to cook dinner and then I'm like, okay, wait a minute. But the thing is, I tried cheating. I tried just breathing in and breathing out and not holding it. It doesn't work. You need all three parts. Breathing in, holding it, and then breathing out. There's something in that process. There are also lots of relaxation options online. The only thing I say with that is everybody's different in what helps them relax. So it may take you a while to find a relaxation session that works for you. I know Stop, Breathe, Think, Insight Timer, Calm, Headspace. I mean, it turns out there are about 20,000 of them, literally. But for instance, I don't visualize things. So when I hear these relaxation things that say, imagine you're on a beach and you're seeing the birds, and I'm sitting there going, I see nothing. I don't see a beach. I don't see birds. But so that doesn't work for me. But I could do something, it could be, feel your toes, feel your legs, feel your knees. I can do that. But if you start with this warmth in your toes and warmth in your knees, I'm saying this for a reason. I can't do that because that drives me nuts. So my point is that try them out, try different apps. Sometimes a voice will really resonate with you, and sometimes a voice will really annoy you. Change. Don't give up. Change. I think the biggest tip that we're talking about today is to try it. If it works for you, do it. If it doesn't work, try something else. But don't forget it, because you never know down the road if something will work for you again. A lot of people are doing yoga. I thought we should have some AFSP yoga mats. That's my new push. Hope mats. What do you think? Hope mats?
I work in communication, so I don't speak. I have to be diplomatic for my department. I personally think that's a great idea.
Yeah, well, I'm saying it in
before
public.
I make work for other people.
So maybe, it'll catch on.
You're very savvy. There's a groundswell of support for the AFSP yoga mats.
Okay, great.
I love it.
Maybe some people can write in what they have tried that they found helpful, just for a few seconds, just to get some ideas from people. A lot of people wrote that breathing has been helpful. I'll keep talking till Brett says something.
Well, I don't want to cut you off, though, Joe.
Go ahead.
Well, one person writes in that cartoons are phenomenal at recentering me following news of the day. So yeah, let's encourage people to write in whatever works for them. And if you're talking about cartoons or whatever it is, be specific. I want show recommendations. Gina writes in, isolating due to a positive COVID-19 diagnosis adds an additional strain on depression and anxiety. That's a very specific question.
It does add, because you're not feeling well. You may feel fine, but have a positive test, but that could mean that you feel like you can't go near anyone and nobody can go near you. I also find that people get stressed out just trying to figure out where they got it from. Sometimes you've been, as cautious as you can be and you still get it. The likelihood is you're probably not going to find out where you got it from. So try to do some things that make you feel better while you have it. There's also the issue of prolonged COVID symptoms or resurgent COVID symptoms. So you think you're over it and then it comes back, or you're back to your normal self, but you're not fine. So it takes you a while to get up in the morning because you have foggy brain, or you have some aches and pains, or, there are a lot of consequences to this. This is serious. And we all try our best not to have a positive test. But if you do, please, take care of yourself. But like I said before, you may be isolating in terms of specific place that you are and who you're coming into contact physically with. but you're on Zoom, right? You're connecting with us. You can find, I bet if you looked up other people who are isolating because of COVID, you might find a whole group. I've been totally fascinated with all the different groups that are online. So being isolating physically because you have COVID is not the same as isolating. But it's scary to have a positive test. Even if you feel fine, it's something that we're all trying to avoid. So I think if you already have depression or anxiety, it can add a level, as you say, and that's where it's good to reach out to your mental health professionals, reach out to the people who care about you and you care about, and just reach out to the people that you can distract yourself with and just try to have some fun with them online. But reach out to the people that you find helpful to talk to, that you can say that you feel crummy. And again, if it's not someone in your immediate personal life, go online. Listen to others. You don't even have to say anything. And eventually you might feel comfortable in a community saying something. I know a lot of the online communities, whether it's like a knitting community or a TV, watching TV, certain TV shows or whatever it is, sports communities, people kind of, I think of it as like a quilting club. They also chit chat with each other and they share little things while they're doing whatever they normally do. So stay away from the negativity online. Let's be real. There's definitely negativity online. Stay away from that. Okay.
So we've got a question that someone else in my life was just asking me recently. So I definitely want to get to this one. As a parent with a child who suffers from anxiety, depression, and substance abuse, how do you help them without finding yourself mentally and physically exhausted as well?
That's a great question. And I kind of just want to say, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of them. And they also have to be engaged in taking care of them. But you're right. It's physically and mentally exhausting when you have someone who has any kind of special need. If you can, have conversations with them about how together you're going to manage this in this most difficult time. You can do this even if you have more depression and anxiety and you have a partner or a friend or a cousin that you talk to. You can talk together. And if you're not sure how, by the way, we have some great guides about how to have a real convo, which I will say my dear friend, Mr. Brett Wean, wrote. We also have the Seize the Awkward campaign, seizetheawkward.org, where you can watch videos of how people have those conversations. But when you have someone who's getting more anxious, breathe with them. Let them know you're there, that you care. And I learned something on my trip to Alaska when someone was asking me about burnout for health people. And there's a very interesting distinction between empathy and compassion. So in empathy, you feel as if it's happening to you, and that's how you get depleted and exhausted. Compassion is that you care about the person and what's happening to them, and you feel that there's something you can do to help them, but it's not yours. So you follow the difference? One is you're actually feeling all those things. The other is you're helping someone who feels those things. One gets less depleted with compassion than with empathy. I mean, it's still compassion is still empathic.
That really gets me though, because when I think back to when I was trying to support my mom, who was suicidal, really frequently, very seriously ill, to me, it's like, oh, you have to compartmentalize, and you don't feel it as your own pain, and think of it. I get all of that, but I also want to point out how hard that is to do, because the action of, like, if it's someone you're really, really close to and you really genuinely care about, which it probably is, there's probably some guilt that you might feel, along with any other emotions that might be going on when you try and do that
Sure, but that's totally true. And it takes reframing, and it takes reminding yourself that, we have that infographic that says, pay attention to the things, or know what you can control and know what you can't control, right? So when you think I think guilt comes from when you think you're supposed to do something that's actually going to change them. And it's the wish that you could do something for them. But it doesn't mean that you can make them better, right? Because ultimately they have to take those actions. What you can do is love them, respect them, be patient and persistent. There's my 4 words again: compassion, respect, patience, and persistence.
CRAP. Is the acronym for that CRAP, Jill? Did I get that right? Compassion.
You could do that.
Maybe we should come up with a better acronym.
Yeah, that wouldn't be my first choice.
But it is memorable. Compassion,
respect, patience, and persistence.
Patience, persistence.
Yeah. How about crop? No. But the point is that those are things that you can do. You can't fix them. And so reminding yourself when you really want them to get better and they're not, or you really want them not to have used those drugs and they did, or they're frozen on the couch because they're so depressed they can't move. You can't pick them up. You can hide the drugs, but they'll find it somewhere else. You can't make them not be anxious, but you can love them. You can listen to them. You can take space when you need a break, and you can take care of yourself. Those are things you can do.
And you can be helping them without necessarily feeling all the emotions yourself that they're feeling.
Yeah, and one of the ways you practice doing that is when you start to feel that, say, oh, no, find something that works for you as a reminder. Whether you say, oh, nope, that's theirs, or, oh, that's not mine, or I can do this instead. Because you're going to feel yourself wanting to fix them and help them and make it better. But you can do things like make sure they eat, make sure they have a glass of water by them. So,
Right. Simple little things.
Like anything for somebody who's not well, right? What do you do when someone has a cold? You don't think, oh, I've got to make their cold better. But you bring them chicken soup, right? Their medicine they need, ginger ale,
tissues.
Yeah, you do what you can do. But somehow when it comes to these more invisible things, we think that we actually can change it, and we can't. We can help.
That's a great way of putting that. We're getting so many good questions. I want to get some more. This one's tough. Sandy writes, I have not left the house since December 11th, suffer from severe anxiety, have a therapist, not too happy with him.
Well, I hope that you've told the therapist that you're not too happy, and together you can discuss whether you should stay with that therapist or find a different therapist. If therapy is hard and it's work, and you get out of it what you put into it. So it's very hard to be home since December 11th. It's very hard for, you have to kind of create your own scenery. We have another graphic. I love our infographics. That's why I'm always talking about them, where you have to take care of your mind, your body, your soul, and your surroundings. And in that case, surroundings is a big one. I personally changed my surroundings and got myself a new seat cushion. I can't decide if I like it yet or not. But, I was sitting there suffering on my seat for like months. And suddenly I was like, oh, wait, I can get a new cushion. A few months ago, I brought a lamp over so that I wasn't sitting in the dark all the time. So you can manipulate your environment to make it different, move something around. But in terms of therapists, that's a conversation to have with your therapist, even as though it's awkward. That's their job. If they can't have that conversation, or that you just can't work with them, you can always change. You're not stuck with someone. But try having that conversation with your therapist, because that's part of therapy. Like I know in my practice, if someone can have a conversation with me, they're more likely to be able to have it with somebody outside in their life. And to me, that's part of how therapy works. Whatever goes on in our relationship is probably happening outside. Not always. So it's kind of like practice in the therapy session to bring outside of the session the things you try in a safe environment.
So one person, Laura, writes in, I definitely agree with the setting your sights low idea. Sometimes if I'm really feeling paralyzed by my anxiety and depression and chronic fatigue, I look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and start with the basic needs and work my way up as I feel better. I think that's brilliant.
That is great. And if you don't know what the Maslow hierarchy of needs is, I can't, I did go to graduate school I think that was almost 40 years ago that we learned that. But the basic needs and then the safety needs are at the bottom. And then you work your way up towards self-actualization. And so you can look at graphics. I could cheat now and like bring up a graphic of the Maslow's pyramid. I'm not going to. I can't believe I don't remember it. COVID brain. But I do believe in COVID brain. And then somebody told me recently there's also coup brain from the coup.
From the coup?
From the things that happened in the Capitol. So that's the other thing. I've just decided I have to. Plus, I'm getting older, so I have to be kind to myself and not freak out if I forget something or can't call it up at a given time. But I think that the idea of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that you've got to take care of the basics before you can move up to self-actualization. And so I think you're right. Going back to the basics can make a difference in how you cope and how you feel. And I think that's a great, helpful hint.
One person writes, I do word searches to clear my mind. Another, Gina says, thank you, Brett Wean. I needed to hear the word shrinky dinks today. I wasn't sure if anyone would get that reference. Doreen, our colleague Doreen, the brilliant Doreen Marshall, writes in, routines for self-care, having a cup of my favorite tea every afternoon between 3 to 5 p.m.
Fantastic.
I have found that I have been experimenting with tea, and since the pandemic, I've become an Earl Grey person.
Ooh. But be careful of that caffeine. If you get hyped up on caffeine, just be careful not to have too much. But there are so many non-caffeinated teas out there. I actually had the experience where, I don't know, one day I just felt very revved. I don't know what it was. Could have been hormones, could have been I didn't get sleep, who knows? But I actually had a cup of chamomile tea. And I don't know. It just completely settled me that one day. Now, I've had chamomile other times too, but maybe I shook it up a little and tried something new. You never know what it's going to be that just turns down that volume. But thanks, Doreen. I look forward to being able to have tea together in the future. I think another thing that happened is that I think we were all hoping, 2020 was such a disaster, one disaster after another, that I hope everybody kept in mind, while we have aspirations and hopes for 2021, it's going to take a while. But this time last year, we didn't have, for instance, a vaccine. So like the level of hope was way lower than it is now. So it's going to take a while in 2021, but I am hopeful that, things are changing, and it's going to be slow and steady. Sometimes people have a mantra, something they say to themselves over and over again. Of course, what I say is, okay, breathe, because I'm obsessed with that. But find something that helps you feel better. It could just be a saying. And the trick is to remember to say it. Know when you're getting more anxious. Know the signs of when you're getting more depressed. And that's a time to bring out the tools that you have in your toolbox.
So, like, for instance, like what kind of signs would that be?
Everybody's different, but a lot of times with depression, people start to get self-critical. They might start withdrawing and isolating. They might get anxious. They might not sleep well, or they might sleep too much, cranky, and each person's signs are a little bit different. But when you become aware of them and you see them coming, you may not be able to completely avoid what's happening, but you can, again, turn down the volume. It doesn't have to be a foregone conclusion that because you didn't sleep last night, suddenly you're depressed. No, maybe you just had a bad night's sleep. So know what those are. Then the next night, try to chalk up last night to bad night's sleep. Do what you can, or do something that will help you sleep the next night.
Someone, Gina again, writes in, it's sort of a two-part thing. She likes the shows Bob's Burgers and Ren and Stimpy, but she also, and I know, Jill, that you like, am I allowed to give away the cartoon that you have a fondness? Wait, now I'm blanking on the name. Under the Sea. SpongeBob. How can I not think of that? I guess that's COVID.
I'm a groupie.
You're a SpongeBob groupie. But Gina also writes in that she attends an online survivors of suicide group twice a month, and that has helped immensely. So, I mean, that brings to mind, whatever kind of groups, whether it's like a fun thing or something more like that, that's a little bit deeper and helpful for your mental health or your life experience and that kind of support. But a lot of people don't know that AA has online groups. They've had them throughout the whole pandemic. And so that's a great idea, Gina, to get involved in a regular group where you can express, and address whatever your concerns are with the same group of people over and over. And probably some will be the same and some will be different, but there's a shared understanding of what's happening. So now I personally think now is a really great time to look in, if you've ever had hesitation of getting into some group like that, whether it's AA or and maybe it's therapy. There's now a lot of people are doing online therapy now. So in a way, it's like an easy, might be easier than like for some people to get out of your house and go to an office. And
do you know that most therapists
do it online?
Yeah, most if you have insurance, most insurances cover online telemental health, and Medicare. It does. So if Medicare does, I'm guessing Medicaid does as well. And there are lots of online options. One
thing I didn't want to let get past us, someone I think from earlier in today's episode, I think you were giving a lot of resources out, and someone wrote in that they're from the UK. Are there, do you have any links or suggestions for where someone in the UK or outside the US could, or how they could Google it?
Well, I know if you're concerned about someone and you want to find a crisis help for somebody in outside the US, you can go to suicide.org, and they have places in every country where you can, and I bet if you call them, they could direct you, go to suicide.org, find the UK, and they can direct you to services. The UK has done a banner job. I mean, they've really become a model for public mental health. So, so I would start with that and see if they can recommend some mental health help for you.
So someone named Lala writes in, I've drunk chamomile tea, even took it to bed with me. I had a real bad panic, and much prayer has helped me. God has sustained my panic. I no longer take meds. So this is, Jill, what do you have to say about spirituality and how that can be helpful for some people? What's the connection with that?
So one thing to remember is religion and spirituality aren't the same. So when someone has a belief in God and they have a religion that they participate in, I mean, in a way, prayer is a way to self-soothe. I've actually been involved with the New York Diocese of the Episcopalian Diocese. So, and it turns out we've been doing a series on suicide prevention there. So if they're the nydiocese.org, the videos, the sessions are taped, but they're coming to our website soon too. Prayer and spirituality can be extremely helpful. And how do they work? Well, part of it is you're reaching out, right? If you're reaching out to God or to a higher power, or second is that you're developing a routine, right? Prayer and services are routines, something you can count on. And it's a place where you can, if you're so inclined to talk, if you have a connection and you're finding that connection slipping, then please think about getting help. That can be another warning sign if you are either a religious or spiritual person. But I'm glad to hear that prayer has helped you. I think it's helped so many people. It's not necessarily a cure. For some people, it can, like you said, it took away your panic attacks or helped you take meds so that you could get better, so that you no longer needed the medication. But the meds are there if you need them again. So thank you for sharing that.
Matt writes in, my mantra is real simple. I can.
Oh, I like that.
That's a good one.
I can. That's like the little engine that could. I think I can. Did you know that I discovered that she's a she? I always thought
the little engine is a she?
Yes. Did you know that?
No, I haven't.
Shocking. I think, I just assumed it was a male because it made it. How crazy is that? But
what?
I know. The little engine that could is actually a female.
I never thought about that. That's really, I need to go back and read that again.
I think I can. Yeah. Or I can, or I can do this. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Matt also, by the way, says, and you can join us on the Mighty, which is a really good point, because the Mighty are partners in today's show and always.
Yeah.
What an amazing community and website that is, where people interact with each other and share their experiences. And so if anyone who's coming to this isn't familiar with the Mighty, it's an extraordinary website, and you should click around and take a look.
Yeah,
really engaged community of people.
There's lots of support, and there's lots of ways to interact.
Yes. Lala says, I also did online breathing exercises in the beginning and special therapy for panic disorder.
Yeah, breathing helps a tremendous amount, especially for panic disorder and panic attacks,
Yeah, so we just have a few minutes left. We have some other questions that I put aside that we've gotten in advance that maybe we can take one of those. All right, because there were some good ones in there. Let's see. Let me hold on. Let's see.
Sure.
Oh, this is a really serious one. This will be a good way to.
Yeah, because we only have another couple of minutes, and we're going to have to.
6 minutes. Okay. I often have suicidal thoughts, and a lot of things that used to work for me when I feel this way, making plans with friends, going to see a movie in a theater rather than staying at home, aren't possible right now. I feel like I'm getting worse. What should I do?
I think that's actually an important point, that many of the things that we usually do to take care of ourselves aren't options now. That also means that we become, have less to say to each other as well. But I hope that doesn't keep people from reaching out. So I think that, first of all, we can go outside, just not near other people. So if there's a way for you to go outside, fresh air, taking a walk, seeing something beautiful can make a difference. But you're right, we do have to find new ways to even to do some of the things we used to do. So if you like going to the movies, there are lots of new movies out. There are lots of old movies on TV. Turn down your lights, make that popcorn, and pretend you're at a movie theater. I know it sounds stupid, but just do it, turning down those lights and making it a special moment.
Put your phone somewhere else.
Well, that's a biggie in general.
I have trouble with that. I'm watching a movie and I got my phone.
I know I'm not engaged when I pull out my phone again. I know I like a show when I put it down and I don't pick it up. But think about the core of what you like to do. And then maybe you can find a way to still do it, even though you're doing it in a slightly different way. Also, try some new things. you don't really know because you're used to doing what you used to do. I'm finding polymers, but this is a challenge, and the thing is to not let it win.
Mm-hmm.
That you can find something else, but it may take a while, and that we can do this. We are doing it. We've been doing it for many, many months. So, it's like if you're running a race, you take breathers and then you can run again. This is a long run that we're doing here. So it's not surprising that people are getting worn out. And so we have to find ways to refresh, to shake things up a little bit, to make it a little bit different. And that means looking outside ourselves, because we do what we usually do, and finding some new things to try. And it's hard. It's, I don't think anybody's having a grand old time right now. But we can, and I'm glad you reached out, and just see if you can try a few new things and something will speak to you.
I'll also just say that feeling is such, isolation is such a big part of when people are feeling that way. But you're not alone. Like so many people are out there. I can say just from AFSP, again, we have chapters everywhere in every state, and there are people in your community who get it. And there are support programs and all kinds of wonderful things. It's helpful to know that despite how you feel, there are so many people wherever you are who, we don't talk enough about it enough as a culture, but there's so many people who have some connection to this and totally understand, and you're not alone.
And what I also hear is hope, that there is something that you can do. And there is. It's just, finding that. Another little thing that I mentioned in a piece I wrote is that my mom passed away. And I got, one of the things I did, I purposely brought home the ice cream sundae glasses. And it's turned out that eating ice cream, I know we don't do it too much, but eating ice cream the way we used to eat it when I was a kid, with a little chocolate syrup and whipped cream out of a can, that's a ridiculous idea, but
it
just makes us smile because it brings back all those memories. I mean, the ice cream is pretty good too, but it brings me to think about other times that were really fun, and not just that moment that's fun, but other times that I enjoyed. Yeah, it makes me a little sad that she's not here, obviously, but it also, their gift to us was to say, know when it's good and celebrate it. And sometimes good is getting in the house before it started raining. Like that's a win. And sometimes it's being out in the rain and getting soaking wet, and it just feels wonderful. So these things change, and that's helpful.
Yeah. Well, we are just about out of time for today. I'm just so grateful to Jill for spending time with all of us. Well, and
thank you and everybody for spending time together. And by the way, these things are posted, so if you want to look at them again, maybe it'll help again. But Brett, thank you so much. And thank you all. Together, we're going to do this.
Yeah. And thanks to the Mighty for being our partner with this. We do this every other month. Share the video. That'll be available if you think other people will can get something out of it. And thank you for spending your time with us today. And everyone, be well.
Take care.
Take care.